Vascular diseases occur when something gets into the xylem or the phloem and is able to block it or do something to it. This creates a much larger problem for the plant. Rather than being localized in one area, it tends to spread out and become generalized throughout the entire plant. This shows you a couple of cutaways of stems. You can see in the area of the xylem and the phloem is supposed to be a nice, clean color. You see this necrotic discoloration. That means there is a problem with those tissues. When you have a problem with those tissues, you are not going to get proper nutrient flow going up or down in the plant. That is going to affect the general plant health. This gives you an idea of Dutch elm disease. Dutch elm disease was a large problem in the 50s and 60s in the United States, and it stopped being a problem when it basically killed off all the elm trees to the point that you couldn't find any more elm trees around. It was caused by a fungus that was transmitted by an insect. The fungus could also be transmitted through root grafts, which occur when you have roots in the soil that come in close proximity with each other. They actually bind to each other and graft on so that it could transmit material through those root grafts as well. Basically, it got into the vascular system. As it did that, it plugged the vascular system so the plant could not get enough nourishment. Eventually, the plant would wilt and die. You can see over here on this tree where branches have been taken out, you have discoloration in branches that are still there. The fungus was transmitted by an insect. Inside of the galleries, it would create these little masses where it wouldn't hurt the insect. As the insect went through the gallery, it would pick up these spores. When the insect went to another tree to lay its eggs, it would transmit the fungus. It was a very insidious sort of problem that occurred. It affected the vascular system. This is a gallery. The central gallery is where the adult female would burrow in. As she would burrow through this, she would lay her eggs. The eggs would then hatch out. They would make these trails going outward. You can see how the trail near the gallery starts out very thin. That's because the larvae is very small. As it got outwards, it got to a much greater size, and that's where the larvae would mature. They'd pupate. After they matured from the pupal stage, they would burrow outwards. They would take off. By that time, the fungus had already grown in after them, and they had become contaminated on the outside of them. So the insect actually became a vector for this particular disease. The pathogen was brought over from Europe in logs that had not had the bark removed. Since then, they have required that any logs that are brought over have the bark removed so that we wouldn't have this type of problem. That doesn't mean that we don't occasionally get another insect in that can create a problem. This pathogen was new to the United States. It was quite problematic there. After that, they have since gone out and found elms in China where the pathogen is native. They've gotten genes out of those plants. They've been able to put those genes into surviving American elms. They are now being able to repopulate elms in city-type areas because they have resistance to this particular pathogen. This is Xylella. It's a xylem-limiting fastidious bacteria. It is called fastidious because it has special nutrient requirements. It's not easy to grow in culture media. It needs specific materials in order to be able to grow. In this particular case, it's limited to the xylem. When it gets into the xylem, it will plug up the xylem. It will create a problem for the plant. The plant will end up dying from it. It is transmitted by a vector. We have Phytoplasmas and Spiroplasmas. These are limited to the phloem. They're actually a prokaryotic type organism. We call them plasmas because they don't have a bacterial wall. They are pleomorphic, which means they take on a lot of different shapes. They don't have the rigidity of a cell wall to be able to give them a specific shape. These are phloem-limited fastidious bacteria. Cankers can also do this sort of damage. In a canker, you've got something on the outside. This looks like a Nectria type canker. The canker gets in, it kills off the phloem on the outer part of this. As it does that, it can go around the tree. Once it does, that's pretty much the end of the tree. There's no way the tree can pass material up and down through the phloem because the phloem is no longer functional. When we look at things that attack the xylem and the phloem, they can be quite problematic. They can do a lot of damage, even if they are very limited in their scope of where they occur. We had sweet bays out on our property. About 3 years ago, a fungus and a beetle came through and they killed them all off. It was quite rapid in the way they did it. Basically, in the spring, everything's looking fine. By the time midsummer runs around, everything is dead. These can become quite problematic in what they do.